Recording. Okay, so what's up? We're back in the podcast, and this time on the podcast we have Vinamre Kasanaa. So I have a couple of questions for Vinamre, including his Gujar heritage and his podcast. Being him, he's a podcaster too, right? So I think we'll relate on a couple of topics here. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get right into it. So Vinamre, I'll start with a very cliche question which nobody has asked you ever, right? Who is Vinamre Kasanaa? What does he do?
Okay, I don't know, bro. Vinamre Kasanaa, man, I can't. By the way, are we doing this in English, or the Hindi language?
It's English. It's English.
It's English only, right? So
Yeah.
easier. Okay. Vinamre Kasanaa has a podcast online. Vinamre Kasanaa has all these Instagram, Twitter, yada yada yada, all of these things where he posts content. I feel weird referring to myself with my full name because I haven't. It isn't a blanket I wear too comfortably. It's weird. But I don't know. A bunch of things. Certainly a seeker, trying to understand the world a little bit better, and has a mouth that just keeps on opening and has so much latent potential that he can't help but share it online because he's already chewed off half of his friends from it. So that's me in a nutshell, in a semi-decent job of defining myself. Just so hard. I hate being boxed in. There you go, bro.
Exactly. So the next question actually it's about boxing, right? So do you put yourself in a box in terms of content? Like do you refer to yourself as a podcaster, or you feel like content creator is the term that fits well for you? Like what's your thought like about creators putting themselves in a box? Does that work in their favor?
I've certainly been guilty of that in the past. In fact, it's helpful in two domains. One, if you sort of niche down, you can fire away and see and get specific success from being specific, sort of like that. In terms of boxing in, it's weird because I see a lot of creators doing it. I mean, if you're a fashion influencer, it's very likely you'll stick to that. If you try to do a book review, your initial audience may hate it, and then you will begin to pander to them once again, something like that. Beyond that, I don't know. I have had certainly far too many experiments in trying to make as much content of as much diversity as possible, including running this moniker called Shatir, which is very weird actually, if you ask me, because I on the inside I do not know if I'm Shatir or Vinamre or if it's. I did it to dissect English and Hindi, as simple as that, but they both took sort of lives of their own, and I don't know.
Okay. What's the story behind the name Shatir?
I was on a vacation in Leh a couple of years ago with a friend of mine, and I was doing this stupid challenge called 55 Days of No Dependence back when my stuff wasn't popular on YouTube, back when I didn't have a YouTube channel. And in that challenge, I was supposed to have no caffeine, nicotine, THC, alcohol, sugar. I was doing this very weird like abstinence challenge of some kind and announced it on social media. So I think on the 46th day, I was just feeling the full effects of what basically a body devoid of sugar, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, THC would feel like, right? And I was just very, very ecstatic. So we had stopped by a highway for some tea and some snacks, and I just had my Danny Dengzongpa / Amrish Puri moment where I was like, I am Shatir. I'm doing a really bad impression, but I just started to, I don't know, I just had some sort of a fit, and I started to speak this out very loudly, and I started laughing to myself, sort of like this, where you find yourself doing strange things in public that makes no sense. And that's how this name stuck, because I shared the story with people who are like, yeah, you're very Shatir. It's like, oh, great. So that's it.
Is it like your alternate personality or like an online persona I've built so that you can act differently for a different form of audience so that they stay longer? Is that
I don't know what the fuck I was doing, to be honest.
No,
Let's just do
after that, like once you
After
start
that,
putting that content.
I mean, in the long term, I would like to consolidate everything under one thing, one umbrella. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think too much about. Maybe I should, but like maybe about branding and what this persona represents, etc., etc. Because then you can just go on in that cycle and never end. Oh, but ये वाला persona तो ऐसा ना करता. I mean, it's just I'm a person behind all of that, so I like to just let it evolve as I evolve.
Dude, then like simple question, right? Why are there like two podcasts? You have the Vinamre Kasanaa show where you primarily
Oh,
talk in
that,
English, and
like
the
I
other
said
one,
before,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, because Hindi, and besides, I think just speaking in English was, I mean, just doing intellectual content also was just, uh, it was like letting go of a lot of latent creative potential that I innately had, the world that I lived in. I felt like that world had no representation anywhere online, and um, a lot of my aspirational self, or the person I aspire to be, right, or my intellectual pursuits, those were on display far more than um, sort of the person that I am, right? So, which is why I did the second Dostcast, and also because I had a table. I was like, let's just use this table. Then I got some curtains, as you can see in the back. I was like, let's use these curtains, and I just set it up like that.
Interesting. That's enough. Which one do you like? Like, dude, see, I agree. Like, both of those like would be very important for you, those two podcasts. But which one do you like? The
I
intellectual
like
part,
both, of
both,
course. I
both of
mean,
them.
you're asking a shoe salesman, which one should I buy? Of course, he's going to say, you should buy both. They're both amazing. You can't have a shoe salesman with an opinion.
Okay,
That's the
which
guy
one
they
do you
fire.
recommend? Like, let's say someone just comes up to you and asks you, like, what do you do? So, which one do you recommend? Like, if they want to listen to your
For,
podcast.
I mean, it's just, I mean, if people have no idea about podcasts, I'm sure my English podcast would seem, it would have, it's slightly less accessible for the average content consumer in India, I would say, for sure. So plus Dostcast has that sort of, I don't know, fun commercial.
Yeah,
I hate to use the word commercial, but like that's the world that we live in. It's just more accessible, right? It's more relatable. It's mostly in Hindi, which is a language that people are more prone to listen to online than listening to Indian speaking English, unless you're a 30 something comedian represented by OML.
interesting. All right, dude. See, I get this question a lot, right? Why do you have a podcast? Like, what is it that you know so confidently that you wish other people would listen to it? So, my answer to it is very simple. I want to hear your answer first. Like, why do you actually have a
Yeah,
podcast?
because I'm entitled. Because I mean, I was with a couple of friends I hadn't met in a while, in years actually, and they were both driving around, and I was sitting in the back seat. I'm not used to sitting in the back seat because it feels weird, like you feel purposeless. You have to lean in like that to really listen in on something substantial. And if you're an introvert, you're fucked because you can just look out forever and do your Z and MD shit, and other people in the front be like, "So what is happening in your life?" Sort of like that.
Yeah,
Um, but the point is, even in the backseat, I couldn't shut up. And like, these are friends I hadn't met. So I was the one leading the conversation, like, oh, yeah, this, that, right? And I realized that, of course, it's just, I just, I'm a very expressive person ever since I've been. And it's, if I don't immediately brain vomit, brain dump, or have these conversations even in private, I feel weird. I just feel like I have too much energy for stuff. So, which is why I felt I like speaking. I'm interested in ideas, and fuck, I'm confident in just blabbering on in Hindi, and then I make sense sometimes, and at least I'm hoping to make more and more sense, and I can also be funny. All of those things, and that's how I decided podcasts are my thing. I also was very very inspired by watching both Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan, who are the more popular podcasters in the world, and Joe Rogan because he was able to bring in his personality into the studio and really like do idiosyncratic stuff
for
that
sure.
I thought were not possible with the domain, such as wearing wigs, smoking in the studio, having 4 hour long podcasts. That iconoclastic style I liked. Tim Ferriss I liked a lot because he his questions were very thoughtful, and he brought on, like, he really is a master of deconstruction. So those guys I thought was like, these are my heroes in podcasting. Let's see if I can cook up something similar. And then eventually, um, people resonated with both podcasts, but now with those casts more. So yeah.
For sure. So a couple of questions following up that, right? So my answer to it is very simple, right? Because I'm selfish. I do the podcast because I get to meet interesting people. That's it. That's my answer completely. If people stop listening to my podcast, I wouldn't care. That's my answer to it. Same question to you. If tomorrow, let's say, your viewers go down to zero, would you still do the podcast?
Um, That depends.
Hmm.
See, I found other ways to meet interesting people, but I will also admit that it is a very it is a very tempting part of podcasting. If you can, when you are able to network with someone, say even via Zoom call, and not even network, like just meet people that are cool and interesting that you can have a conversation with for an hour. Um, but if my audience went down to zero, would I still do a podcast? I would probably not.
Okay. Would you just go and meet them via other opportunities like
No, I
podcast
would
is
just
not a
fucking
main
live
thing,
my
right?
life then. I would
Huh.
just do the
Okay.
same things that I do now.
Interesting.
This is just one of many mediums, right? It's just that. So the intent with podcasting, at least, is you both parties feel what they have to say is valuable enough for an audience to listen in on. The day that stops happening is the day I think any podcaster decides that this is not something that they should do further. Thankfully, people have found it consistently interesting in both podcasts, so there is
Interesting.
that.
All right. So, what do you think about the Indian podcasting scene, right? So, it's been booming since the past year because
It's
podcasting is.
boring.
I agree, it's
Like
boring. The
it's
thing is,
super
it's
boring.
simple to make a podcast, right? You can just sit, start
Yeah.
recording, and just blabber nonsense, and it's still a podcast because it's an hour long of conversation. So, do you think it's just because of the influx and too moo many people coming in and not doing
I think
actual?
it's great that too many people are coming in because that's going to filter out a lot of people. Besides, lot of imposters, say to use that word, are going to die out fast. Um, I think it's boring because Indians are trying too hard to be aspirational, which is often what happens when you know the early adopters use the product very weirdly. I mean, you're from the tech world, I'm not, but I'm just using that analogy too. So it's all, and I don't blame anyone. I don't discourage anyone from being. So I think it's wonderful. I think I encourage that. But when it comes to, so if you look at the podcast charts, you will often find the same self-help or religious stories. You've got audio narratives and thrillers, vaguely interesting. But podcasts really, if used rightly, can be the places where not just, I would say, massive scandal, but massive information that you would not find anywhere else should explode out. And I think that doesn't happen enough. One of the podcasts I deeply admire is the AIB podcast. They stopped doing it a couple of years ago. But the podcast they did with Shah Rukh Khan is just, that's the level of podcast where he's navigating through being PC and still sort of, saying fuck you to PC culture in the ass by saying that I'm a big participant in PC culture. And that conversation, that podcast took a risk because they went to some deep, risky territory. They asked meaty questions. There was a lot of off-script laughter, right? So I don't see a lot of spontaneity and natural personality in Indian podcasts. I see more interview style, more nothing against your podcast as well. I know we're doing this
Okay.
thing, but
Yeah.
I would like to see people as they are on the podcast, right? And not in the sense we're two 16-year-olds, let's just blab on about the universe and do that in some lazy kind of navel gazy way. I mean, in the sense that if you're really 16, then you should just confess, shit, I'm 16, I don't know jack shit, and begin from there. Far more interesting, right? You get far more people. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
living
just
through
my
the
take.
lens type of situation, right? That I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
what this scene is missing is, for the lack of a better word, even if there are so many conversations out there, real conversations, true conversations, you might be some Serie A funder, excuse me, some VC, but if your wife has made horrible chilas, and that's something that should be a part of the podcast, and I don't know why that is. It's just people um, are afraid to let go of their personas.
Probably like a vlog in a podcast type, right? That could be fun.
Not really that. Just
Not that?
like
Okay.
I feel like there are too many professional conversations everywhere. It's
There's no
it's
authenticity.
the
Like,
it's the creative person's LinkedIn. Let's just put it like that.
yeah, I agree. Like, people have just a mask on and they try to show that they know XYZ, but they really don't. Something like that. I agree. Dude, so how has your Vinamre Kasanaa show been? So, because it's almost like a formal podcast, right? So, do you still resonate with the statements you give, like, right now? That,
What do you mean?
I mean, do you consider Vinamre Kasanaa show as a formal podcast and you have like interview time system? What do you think?
with the Vinamre Kasanaa show, I just have conversations in English. As simple as that. It is really a language difference, nothing more than that. Increasingly, I've switched over from asking very deconstruction and thought process centric questions to the last one I did with Raj from Stoa HQ. We just talked a bunch about cohort based courses, but then also talked a bunch about Kanye West and Goa and food, which is something you would not expect a podcaster and a founder of a big cohort to talk about. But I'm increasingly just talking about the things I'm interested in. The only difference is the language.
Interesting. All right. So,
Yeah.
what's the worst thing about podcasting, according to you?
Scheduling with guests,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. If I in an ideal world, if I wanted to do a podcast, I could just do it right there and then.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that all it isn't. It's a flip side. Also, there's a flip side to it as well because that also enables you to um, then be creative and find someone else. Right? It forces you to be a little bit more disciplined and organized, which I think is. I mean, you need that. If people think that I was in Mumbai once and someone remarked, "Oh, podcasters have horrible schedules," and I was like, "Bitch, how many podcasters have you met?" Um,
Yeah.
which serves to prove that people think they can sort of attempt to do it lazily, but it does require a lot of rigor. Trust me. Um, like to produce a podcast consistently every Saturday, right? Do it for for a year, for a couple of months. That just takes a lot of consistency, more than people imagine.
Interesting. Like, who's that one guest you wanted to do a podcast with but just couldn't? Probably because of scheduling.
Probably because of what?
Scheduling.
Oh, scheduling. Yeah, there are several who I really wanted to do with this guy. I'm gonna get a podcast with him soon, though. I'm convinced, one day or the other. G Tile. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Give me a background on Jeet Thad.
You can look him up. He's an author. He's a poet. He's written 3 or 4 fantastic books. He's. I grew up reading his books. I really enjoyed them.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So, what's a day in life in Vinamre Kasanaa? Wait, I messed it up. What's a day in life with Vinamre Kasanaa?
What's a day in my life?
Yeah.
Good that you asked me now, as I'm on a productivity momentum upsurge. So I wake up around anywhere from 6 to 8 a.m. is when I generally wake up. Sometimes I'll wake up at 8:30, but this is generally when I wake up. At this point, I will confess I'm still struggling with a morning routine because I shamelessly still check my phone. So I sort of fucked my attention span up a little bit with that. But then I get up anyway. I listen to some kind of pump me up, let's fucking attack the day kind of music. And then I get up. I, put on my retainers. They smell horrible from all of that bile and all that tooth juice. Um, I do that. I brush my teeth, take a shit. The standard things that people often miss out on because they want to sound cool. I do take a shit. Then I drink some water. Then I immediately go from my house to where I'm at to my studio. Some mornings I'll just come here to drink my coffee because I keep my coffee here. Forces me to get out of the house immediately and start my day differently. And then I will do some kind of free writing. If there are days when I've woken up late, say at 8:30, and I want to start my workday by 10:30 max to max. On those days, I just grab the coffee, directly hit the gym. After the gym, I come here, I don't take a shower, and then I proceed to do my free writing. And then I start with the most important things of the day, which are usually in my Notion, or I make a paper checklist, something like this. A paper with 3 most important things that I must achieve that will make the day worthwhile, and then other optional objectives, right? Then I schedule in meetings, everything like that on this paper. Once that is done, then I engage in some kind of tweet writing. I will write several tweets all at once to, plan content for the week or so. I will either recently I'm releasing a newsletter tomorrow for the first time. So this morning I just spent pretty much all of it writing this newsletter. Um, so I'll make sure whatever I do, the first thing I do is some kind of writing, which helps me get a lot of momentum, which makes me feel at ease and aligned with my purpose, right? Having done that, then I move on to other kinds of work, such as planning a video schedule. Lately, I wasn't putting out a lot of videos. So if I'm feeling particularly creative right after the writing, I will just take the flap off my webcam and begin recording some videos. Once that is done, then I look back at my Notion and see what needs to be done. If I have any more meetings or stuff, at this point it's usually noon or lunch, so I take a break, I go back home, I eat some lunch, I come back. Then there are some unproductive hours for an hour or so where I'm usually full from eating. So I will read some kind of a book. The last book I've read was Joke by Chuck Palahniuk, which is a novel about sex addicts, about a sex addict. Um, After that, I try to do all the busy work. So all the calls, all the meetings, the things. I talk to my team about the various things that they're doing, the various parts of for example, the cohort, what's the
Yeah.
progress on that, all of that. Around 5 or 6 p.m., I'm done. So at this point, I decide if I want to keep working on stuff, if there is a deadline, or if I can just quit for the rest of the day and chill. At this point, either I keep working till 7 or 8, and that's usually a very work centric day. I hate sitting in front of the computer for too long, so I keep switching up places. If I come back earlier, then I just chill with a friend, go back home, meet my parents, or have some kind of social activity planned for the evening. That's pretty much it,
Interesting.
and then I get to bed relatively early.
Great. So, what made you get into writing though? Like, because see, I know that you kind of have some sort of a poetic background because I've watched a couple of streams with Prakar.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, what made you get into writing?
I've just always written. I don't know. It's just what made you get into running this um, casmarkets.
Oh.
Just intuitive, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So writing was intuitive to me. Besides, I was always a public speaker in school. I always spoke in debates and speeches, all that jazz where they make you stand up and do like talk about how you love the country, about discipline, all that jazz. So I did a bunch of that, and then I think writing was just a natural medium for me, and got good grades in school in English. That was encouraging. Parents were encouraging. Teachers were encouraging. Yeah, it's just
Yeah. All right. So, with regards to public speaking, how do you not get nervous while you're on a podcast? Because I've done a couple of podcasts, right? And I'm visibly nervous right now, right? So, how do you not get nervous
I
while
don't I
recording a
don't think that
podcast?
you're nervous.
You don't feel
Matlab,
nervous?
I can't see
Kavi?
that you're nervous now that you mention it. Even um, I usually I mean, if different situations, different things. I don't have a one size fits all answer. Like for example, you're nervous. I'm out of breath because I've spoken a lot, right? So I'm speaking from my throat here. Maybe I could take a couple of deep breaths and settle back and speak slowly. So for guests, I always establish rapport before I start a podcast.
Okay.
I don't I don't jump in not knowing what the other person sounds like.
Can you elaborate? How do you set up a rapport with someone?
So it's just how do I do it? Well, I know what that person is because I've done some research on them. Of course, they're my guest. I should do research. All podcasters who think they can nail it without doing research are just stupid.
Sure.
Um, and I know what that person likes, and I let the conversation also dictate what they like, what they dislike, their interests. And I mean, it's very easy to vibe with people. There are so many common starting points. Hey, great. Oh, you're 16, I'm 16 as well. Oh, fantastic. You like films? I like films as well. Oh, great. I saw your XYZ and loved it. And just, I don't know, sheer excitement. I'm a little bit tired from a day of work right now, but usually when I do podcasts, I try to bring in as much energy as possible into the conversation because I want to make this person hyped about the fact that we're going to do this. It's fantastic.
Interesting.
And I think one time I remember being nervous was when I was recording a podcast with my mentor Rajat Kapoor because one, the audio was fucked. I was at an outdoor location and I was still in my early days of doing it. I think I still am. I think most people are in India. And there I was like not sure how to navigate, but it took me a while. Eventually, I you know managed to sail through. But
What's been your best podcast?
oh, that's I've done so many. I don't know.
None. Like, which one of them really, like, you still remember that conversation even now? None. Interesting. All right. So let's get back to Boston, right? So you studied in Boston. What did you study? How was Boston? Do you really recommend students to go actually out of the country and study? Because see, it's a very common narrative right now. People are like just shitting on colleges and further education
Right.
and saying that you just start a business and whatnot. So what do you think about that? You think Boston changed you in a good way? What's the case?
Um, for sure,
Mm-hmm.
100% changed me massively. It's also the first time that I lived away from home for 4 years in a different country. So it's like hard mode. And then you also have to start from zero, which I think moving to any new place allows for. Moving to a new country in a college, I think that zero is like far down than you usually expect. I'm sure you can be a very social person. You can do the entire gamut of already knowing who's from Delhi and who's going to Boston, so I can befriend them early on. But I did none of that, so it's just like oof, dropped in the middle of nowhere, and just was an upward struggle for the first 2 years, trying to get good grades, trying to get discipline, trying to make a social life for myself, trying to um, trying to have full-fledged conversations in the English language, so I could think in English, not just croak a few words or live in some kind of second class Indian international student existence where you're just vicariously enjoying the lives of others, but you sort of hate yourself because you can't mingle with others. So just preventing all of that. I was a kid. I was what you're 16 now. I was 18 when I arrived, and by the time I was 20, I started seeing some results, and yeah, for sure. I also took cold showers every day in Boston, which was fantastic, which I miss tremendously.
What's the thing with cold
I
showers
remember
like?
taking cold showers in when it was minus 20 degrees Celsius outside. Very proud moments. Just fucking just.
Dude, why would you do that to yourself? Like mid minus 20 cold showers? No. Like, does it like wake you
No, it
up?
was
Like, what's
great.
the reason? Why do people take cold showers?
You should listen to Wim Hof.
Wim Hof, okay.
Yeah, Wim Hof is the guy who can stay in frozen lakes for hours at end. He's the guy who's invented Wim Hof meditation, which is a modification of Kapalbhati meditation minus the spiritual element. It's very practical, straightforward, and he believes that the breath has the answer to everything. And um, cold exposure in general is supposed to put your body in enough physiological stress that it activates the fight or flight response. Except now you do it voluntarily, so you can stay calm in all of that, and that sort of makes you invincible, resilient, and not only physiologically but
Mm-hmm.
psychologically. So imagine stepping out of a cold shower in minus 20 degrees. You're on fire, right?
For sure.
Because you've just experienced colder temperatures on your body. I mean, I don't advocate this for anyone. I just had lots of experience, and even I didn't go the full way because the full way could literally mean freezing my head off in certain circumstances. But you can gradually build up to there. Some people like to do hot and cold. They'll do most of their shower hot, but then they'll end with like 30 seconds of cold. I think that's great. In India, there are other issues such as the tankers we have in our buildings and our
Mm-hmm.
houses. If it's hot, even if you try to get cold water, it's going to remain hot, so you
For sure.
really get cold showers in the winter only.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So do you encourage like students to move out? Like, is that something that you would advocate for? Like, students to move out and try to live their life by by themselves when they're 18.
For sure, I think it's the best time to do it. I'm going to move out again in a couple months,
Mm-hmm.
and live elsewhere, live nomadically. I don't know, it's very exciting that way, but now that I've done it a bunch of times, it's it's almost like constant movement is more home to me than home itself, even though home is wonderful and I'm massively grateful. But I can only have that because in retrospect I've had so many experiences finding who I am abroad in
Mm-hmm.
in other countries, in other cities, that I don't think the constant reinforcement of home could ever provide, right?
Interesting.
For example, you would never expect an Indian kid who, let's just say, is, I'm going to use very
Mm-hmm.
broad adjectives here, right? Who's brainy, can write a little bit, doesn't play too many sports, right? Again, a box. To
Mm-hmm.
go to America and become a skateboarder. Well, I used the longboard for over 2 years as my main mode of transportation when I couldn't Uber or take a bus or walk, and it was massively fun. That's the sort of I guess, extension of an identity that I could never really have here. I can have
Mm-hmm.
other kinds. For example, if I move to a metropolitan city and suddenly decide, okay, let's, I've been very, what's the right word? I've been very chaste sexually. So you move to like a big city and you have the opportunities to explore who you are and your sexuality, all of those things. This is true. This is a true story. I
Mm-hmm.
have seen several Indian kids go from India and finally explore their homosexuality abroad, which was crazy. It's just
Interesting.
that that environment is more conducive to that. It's like that's just one example. People who have been very, quiet, introverted, suddenly realize they have a very, social side to them. People go and realize that they're tougher than they think. People go and realize that they were relying on their hometown and their sense of identity all their life and get their egos crushed. In any case, any exposure to the outside world, anything beyond the four confines of your house walls is better,
Interesting.
inevitably better, because it's inevitable. I mean,
How
I don't,
different
I
was
don't,
like
yeah.
school from like your hometown and when you went to Boston? What changes did you experience?
I mean, that's very hard to say. There's several standard blanket experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's been about 2 years since I've graduated, so it's a little faded in the memory. But I mean, you can ask this question to pretty much anyone. I don't
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything spectacular to offer you in the sense because it's already been said a bunch of times.
Interesting. All right. So, how was school for you? Like, anyways, like we'll jump back to your cohort. How was school for you?
How was school for me?
Yeah.
I think I had fun in school. I think I saw some pretty dark shit in school. I think I was semi interested in studies. Um, yeah, I remember the times I remember fondly in school are the times my ego was being massaged with a prize or an award. I really liked that. That was nice. Um, but then also I remember like the most fun times are usually the times when I um I decided to pinch someone on their butt with a pen, or open the, like, for example, if you can see this pen, right? It's a pretty standard, how, I don't know what the fuck this is, but you can
Mm-hmm.
basically open a pen up, right, the entire thing from the back as well. Okay, this is perfect, right? And what you do is you can put a paper ball inside
Yeah.
and you can wet it with your spit, and then you go like this,
Done that
sort of like
before.
you would throw a
Sure.
poison dart.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to love doing this in school. I would do this all the time. So I always, the parts of school that I really enjoy is the inventive games you could play. Like one game you could play was, if you had winter blazers in your school, you could just put it on someone and beat the fuck out of them in a group. It was called Kumble Parade. Of
Yeah.
course, all of this sounds wrong in retrospect. Oh my god, corporal punishment, don't beat your kids, no
Sure.
violence in school, all that. I understand that, but yeah, those are just some those are some
Interesting.
fun memories.
That's nice, dude. Like people usually at this moment, like the trend on social media is people are shitting on schools. Kereki schools, they do not do anything, do not teach anything. Actual skills can be learned by yourself on the internet. What do you think about that? Like for me, it's
I
not the
think I
case.
think people need to be socialized. It's
Exactly,
very
exactly.
convenient to say from your laptop, but
Mm-hmm.
it also shows a lack of exposure when all you do is just be at your house, go to the park. I don't know. Like school may in school it is, you're gonna meet weird, strange, fucked up kids, and you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna do weird, strange, fucked up things. Turns out that society is a lot like that. It has got its roses, it has got its thorns. So school is a microcosm of society, except with more rules and sort of like safer in that sense, right? So you can, I mean, it's not idle, but it's a good training ground for what the world is going to be like.
For sure.
Now, if you don't go to school, if only your parents homeschool you, you miss out on the opportunity to socialize with kids, rough and tumble play, wrestling, understanding group dynamics, being able to make friends, uh,
For sure.
leadership, all that jazz just gets thrown out of the window.
I think it's a great place to fail, right? Because there's almost like
Yeah,
a safety net. You can experiment anything and build anything with the leverage of probably with
yeah,
the help of professors and whatnot, and you have the guidance. And if you fail, nothing really happens, right? Because it's in school, you don't have to pay any
yeah.
bills,
All
nothing.
you said school, right? So school doesn't have
Yeah,
professors.
I mean, I fucked it
Uh,
up a bit.
no, no,
Teachers,
no, no,
principals.
no. Also, school is a great place to learn about shame and
Yeah,
pain,
yeah, yeah.
right? Shame, pain, anger. Um, because your classroom is a lot like a tribe. So it turns out that most of the things we were nerdy about, we were either made fun of, and then those are the same things we run startups on, make companies on, and eventually, find our way through it as adults, and that's okay. But in school, if you strike out too much, you're instantly shamed, ridiculed. So that is an interesting element, because people might say, I would like to protect my kids from shame, grief, being socialized, called names, being hurt, bitten, uh, you know, isolated. But I feel like that's all necessary, because those emotions slash if situations will have to be encountered, and you want to encounter them as soon as possible, and not as a 25-year-old venturing out of your house for the first time and seeing how, dunya to, it's like, I don't know. Yeah, that's
I
just
think
that's
too
just my
much discipline in
experience.
school will kind of ruin that, right? What was that one thing you would want to change in the school system right now,
Yeah,
which would probably help
I'd
students?
say I would love to have more esoteric subjects. I would love to have an actual emphasis on physical activities, as opposed to making it physical education, that boring subject.
Mm-hmm.
More infrastructure around physicality for sure. Meditation classes would be great, I think. And then I also think, if you could, get rid of CBSE and NCRT, maybe introduce a way where people can choose their subjects from, like, you have your essentials, your core activities, but then you can choose a bunch of things, and that changes your experience completely. Um, yeah, beyond that, I mean, I haven't really dissected the education system too much to have like a ready set of answers about what needs to be changed about school. That's the first thing that comes to my head. The other thing is, probably I would love to see far more people with skin in the game, which is something I only encountered in college, only because I did a degree in advertising, which by its name had to have people who had actually worked in the industry. So having, if someone teaches you business studies,
Mm-hmm.
but they've never really run a business or been a part of a business, so what they teach you is the curriculum. That's fine, but then the implications of learning that are just you mugging it up, nothing
For
beyond
sure.
that,
For sure.
right? So I remember taking my business studies classes, my accountancy classes, but I'm learning all about GST from Google, my friend. So there you go.
For sure. For sure. So you have lived in a couple of cities, right? So what's the best sort of? Okay, let's put it this way, right? What are the couple of things you would like to borrow from Boston and put it in the society, the Indian society at the moment?
Why the emphasis on Boston again and again?
Boston, because probably you have experienced it a lot, and you have spoken about it in a podcast for a while, right? And about you
Yeah,
kind of
not
work.
that much. I don't like to play the whole
No,
I went abroad, here's what I learned, card, yada yada. I get bored of it.
not really.
People always ask me, what did you do in Boston? It's been a while. So I don't, like I said, I don't have some Swades revolutionize the face of education kind of thoughts around what to do about all of this,
What's the best place you
really.
have lived in?
The best place I've lived in, Bandra West is a chill neighborhood to live in for sure. Top. Um,
You were at IBM podcast, right? You worked in IBM podcast.
for a month, yes.
How was that experience like?
It was good. I learned a bunch. Figured it wasn't the right fit for me, so I moved on.
Interesting. All right, let's talk about the Indian content space, right? Like
Sure.
at the moment, the Indian YouTube content space. What do you think? How is it? How is it? Where does it stand?
I don't know.
No,
It's a very blanket
very
statement, bro.
blank,
Like,
broad question.
yeah, like um it's certainly driven by more drama, at least what I see on YouTube, for sure. YouTube India is definitely about more drama. But there are a lot of intelligent content creators, and I'm not saying that somehow intelligence is greater than drama in whatever degree or value, but there are a lot of intelligent creators on Twitter. I like Indian content spaces Twitter, because it's not just conventional camera facing creators, but different people of a wide variety. Um, I don't really consume too much Instagram content. Yeah.
Do you think like the content is too massy, and do you think the audience forces you to be massy after a certain point? Let's say after a couple of after numbers build up, you get a lot of audience. Do you think the Indian content space is a bit massy? And would you be massy if you get a lot of subscribers?
I don't know what Masi is. I think I look at it as simple as, where is the person I want to meet or make content from? For if they happen to be in a city that has no context about my life experience and my productivity routine video, right? Then I would try to meet them where they're at. As simple as that. So that isn't massy. That's just being, really just being a good fit for your audience. I have a course coming out with CA Neeraj Arora, a writing course for CA students. The cohort that I teach is, far more advanced, mostly spaced around online writing, right? And has you do 15 days of nonstop writing and publishing. Now that cohort might be too advanced and frankly not the best fit for someone who's just looking to learn the bare bones of cultivating a writing habit, getting ahead in their career, right? Being able to read a lot more. So that entire course I built.
Interesting. Why is every creator starting a cohort at the moment? Like, because I've seen
I,
like
I don't
ads.
know. I don't know too many creators starting
Yeah,
cohorts. Honestly,
almost everybody is starting
very.
one, right?
I don't know. Maybe in your echo chamber, my echo chamber just has other people. The
Whom do
other
you watch?
cohort people I know, like are like the 5 or 6 friends of mine who are also creators. A couple of companies. That's about it. Cohort-based courses. Not everyone has the gall to pull off because it's one thing to make a bunch of camera-facing videos and have a marketer run it, and the entirely different thing to actually teach. Um,
Would you do a
you know,
would you do a cohort based course if offered, like as a student?
oh, me, would I enroll? 100%. I have multiple times. It's great.
I think it's a good simulation for a classroom type situation, right? Because you have a couple of people around you at
Yeah.
the moment.
Also, there are no rules in the sense that you are
Mm-hmm.
not supposed to, may I do the standard, may I drink water kind of bullshit, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
be forced to sit for any more than you have. And since most cohorts happen around assignments and practical things that you do together, there is a lot of community learning in a classroom. In a typical classroom, um, the professor lectures, you take notes, but discussion sections sort of happen elsewhere. So beyond the obvious teaching and the modules, the education keeps happening even when we have no Zoom calls, because there is everyone else in the cohort interacting with each other. That's what they call social learning in these charmed circles of cohort based courses. But that social learning is wonderful. I've seen my the people who did my first cohort just and live on each other's Twitter handles, just comment and give feedback nonstop, and just sort of form little groups around ideas that they were inspired by on their own, right? Which is wonderful that you would, when people do something that is both challenging but ultimately encouraging and will help them, lead a better life, have more skills. It's crazy how they band up together and share
Interesting.
camaraderie and act as if they're one group, and it really becomes one group. Because I've only done one cohort, but I remember the last day was so bittersweet for all of us, because we were so used to meeting each other week after week, doing sessions, reviews, feedback, and yeah,
It just
it's
becomes
different.
like somewhat like a university, right? But a bit less formal, right? It's almost like an alumni network you can exploit art in the future and stuff.
Yeah,
That's
for
good.
my cohort, I don't dumb down the content at all. I don't water it down. So
Mm-hmm.
there isn't the formality of me being a professor or you referring to me as sir, which is downright stupid because you can see a guitar in the background, a bunch of cameras, right? I'm clearly young, right? Just like you are. Um, but the rigor is pretty much the same. I also delete all the bullshit about needless theory, needless steps
Mm-hmm.
that I've had to take, that everyone who's ever enrolled in a writing program, media program has had to take, that are just downright stupid. What people need are the tools to do what they want to do and the mindset. The theory comes from practice. That's what I found, strangely
For
enough.
sure. That's nice. That's nice. All right. So
Yeah.
we started with the cliche question. We'll end with the cliche question. So the cliche question here is, what are the three key pieces of advice you'd like to give to new creators, like upcoming creators?
I'm a new creator, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd say number one, a little bit of honesty goes a long way. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably number one. Number two, this is just, if you like it, fine. If it's just a means to publish something you care about, do not make it your entire life. Find processes and systems so you can actually live an interesting life, so you have interesting content
True.
as a byproduct. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
very important. I think some content creation just ends up as a circular feedback loop of just being on the internet, react to the internet, and makes your actual lived life very, just say, lacking in color. Number three is probably be okay with looking stupid, because I've spoken with a fake accent for 2 years. I thought I was doing my best. I really thought I was. So I have compassion for that guy trying to be someone. Just I will have compassion for who I am in this podcast 2 years from now. Like, oh my God, what an idiot. But like, also, he was trying his best. So definitely have, compassion for yourself, your past self, because it takes balls to, or vaginas to put yourself out there, and do a public act of creation. I don't think enough people talk about that. Like, kudos to you that you're doing this at 16. That's fantastic.
It means a lot, man. Thank you so much for doing this, Vinamre. It's been a great time talking to you.